guys, if you're new to Deception Bytes, hit the like and subscribe button and be sure to hit the bell to be notified of future videos. If you wish to support the channel, the links are in the description below. Now, fasten your seatbelt. Here we go. Okay guys, I'm back again and it is Sunday, September 15th, and it is 10:25 p.m. Eastern Time if you're on medication, and if you're not, you probably need to be. All right, well, let's just get right into it, and I'm just going to pick up from where I left off in the last video, and we've got lots of good stuff to get to, so let's get at her. All right, now, and interestingly enough, just as I was about to come back, I noticed something on my Twitter account, and so I have something for you that's really new, like really new, and it's pretty mind-blowing. So we will get to that in a minute. All right, let's take a look at this. I was made aware of this and I had never seen it before, but this is Joan Rivers, of course. Joan Rivers gives an accurate opinion of real Donald Trump. Too bad she died a month after publicly calling Michelle Obama. A-T-R-A-N-N-Y. All right, so let's listen to Joan Rivers here.
How do you really feel about Donald Trump?
I adore Donald. Do you know, smart.
Yes.
No one gives him credit. I did Celebrity Apprentice. I thought, Donald. And then you go and you do Celebrity Apprentice and you realize this is so smart, so professional. I think he's terrific. I think he would have made a great president.
Really?
Because he's a businessman. He would have walked and said, okay, now what do we have to do?
Right.
All right, you do this, we'll do this, let's do it. He's smart.
How do you really feel about Donald
Now,
Trump?
that's interesting because there she was just giving her honest opinion. She had been on Celebrity Apprentice, and it's interesting that she said he would have made a great president. Well, I wish she had lived, because he did make a good president, and he is a good president. So I think that that's wonderful. It's she said he's smart. He's, I just thought that was very interesting because a lot of celebrities now, of course, distance themselves. Even those that in the past have spoken well of Donald Trump are now making, horrific comments about him, and we know why. We know why. But anyway, I thought that was really interesting. So let's go back here because we've got more interesting things to get to. Now let's look at this. Now, it was a while ago when she died, but they have just done the whatever. They were looking into the death, and they have ruled it a suicide now. And in other words, she threatened to expose pedophiles in Hollywood for doing the unimaginable to her, so the cabal suicided her. And it says, breaking news, child actor Mya-Lecia Naylor, 16, who appeared in Cloud Atlas alongside Tom Hanks, hanged herself at her family home on the spur of the moment after struggling with exam stress and being grounded by her parents. Well, I've struggled. I've had exams a lot in my life, and at some very difficult universities, and yes, you get really stressed out, but do you kill yourself? No. And over being grounded? Not so much. So I don't know. But I will tell you that it's suspicious. Like her father said, I don't think she meant it. I think it was just a spur of the moment thing, and she was mad, and it was like meant to get back at us or whatever, and she didn't mean to die. Well, how does he know that? So it's just a little bit odd. And I wouldn't doubt that there's more to it, but it has officially been ruled a suicide. So there you go. And it's weird because the wording was weird, because they said actually they said they didn't say suicide. They said death by misadventure. That's what they said. That's what the coroner said. Death by misadventure. Interesting. They find her hanging, but it's death by misadventure. What the heck is that? It's kind of like when they said about Isaac Cappy that he forced himself off the bridge. How do you force yourself off the bridge? Either you jump or you don't. But how do you force yourself? Odd wording. All right, now here is the one that I just saw, and we are going to get to this next, and this may take a while, so I figured I'd cover it at the beginning and see how much time we have left. All right, this is by Tiffany. Sorry, a yawn is trying to take over my whole face, and I'm sorry if I made you yawn. Tiffany Fitzhenry official website. Now, I don't know who this is, but this is what she has to say. And this was posted 4 hours ago. So let's take a look. You want to know something interesting? Yes, of course. We all want to know something interesting, don't we? Sure. There are 276 global intelligence files that mention George Clooney by name. You know, George Clooney, the Hollywood actor. And I will remind you that this is the same man that we saw in a boat with Barack Obama with that little Chinese girl. And he was either unzipping his pants or zipping them up, but I think he was unzipping his pants in this boat, so it's a little odd. So it doesn't surprise me, but there are 1,507 Sony emails and documents that mention George Clooney by name, but that's to be expected, right? I mean, Sony at least pretends to be an entertainment company. Spoiler, that's not what they are at all. There are also 98 DNC emails that mention Clooney and 26 Podesta emails, which is noteworthy and interesting as well. To say nothing of all the State Department emails revolving around the Oscar winner, but I'm most interested in the fact that there are 276 global intelligence files about the dude that starred in Ocean's 11. To me, that's more than curious. It's a glitch in the matrix, a little rip in the carefully stitched fabric of the illusion, a rip which I'm about to tear into a gravity-swallowing black hole. What are the global intelligence files? The global intelligence files published by WikiLeaks is a trove of more than 5 million emails from the Texas headquartered global intelligence company Stratfor. These emails reveal the inner workings of a company that fronts as an intelligence publisher. Yes, it fronts as a thing that shouldn't even be a thing, but provides confidential intelligence services to large corporations such as Bhopal's Dow Chemical Corporation, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and government agencies, including the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Marines, and the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency. The emails show Stratford's web of informers, payoff structure, payment laundering techniques, and psychological methods. Here's what you may be wondering. What any of that could possibly have to do with starring movies and TV shows, Hollywood attending awards ceremonies and jetting around with Cindy Crawford and Randy Gerber? I think she's about to tell us. You may be wondering why an intelligence publisher working in a service of the military-industrial complex, U.S. government, and intelligence agencies is so interested in George Clooney, why he's being clearly and visibly tracked by Stratford. You may be starting to suspect that, just like establishment puppet State Department CIA shill Ellen DeGeneres, who we've covered before, George Clooney is not what he appears to be, and you'd be right. Warning. Only read on if you're prepared to let go of all your notions of what actors like George Clooney really are. So what is George Clooney anyway? Besides horrifically good looking. Not horrifically, that's a bad adjective. But now that I know more about him, no, not so good looking. Okay, you're told George Clooney is a Hollywood actor. Sorry, I'm trying to swallow my yawn, and that's not working very good. Well, it's not that late. It's only 10:35. What's wrong with me? I need to wake up. You're told George Clooney is a Hollywood actor, activist, and UN ambassador, and all those things are true in the same way that the FBI, Secret Service, and JFK were all in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. I know, I'm going to be making you yawn. I've got to stop even thinking about yawning. No yawns. These statements are true, but all of the important details are missing. Georgia Boy found his way into my crosshairs recently because of this. Clooney romp. George Clooney, accused of sex act with ex-lover of Prince Andrew's pedo pal. Epic find. Yeah. So, how do you like that? When his less than flattering association with the bombshell Epstein scandal was exposed, that's what tipped the scales for me in favor of doing a deep dive expose on the two-time Oscar winner. You see, I could spend literally all my time researching, piecing together, and detailing for you every single Hollywood celebrity's ties to the underbelly of the world you were never supposed to know existed. The world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. I'm confident, however, that I won't have to do that after a few of these, like my recent Ellen expose, you'll start to get the point. It's all an illusion, a grand illusion, crafted and held together by the George Clooneys of the world in order to serve a global economic elite world order whose objective is to suck the lifeblood out of humanity. Needless to say, we're tearing all that shite right the hell down. So as I was saying, spoiler alert, none of these false idols are remotely close to what you've been told they are. None of them. But for the sake of time, I'll just focus on the ones getting instead of this word, BLOW, jobs, I'm going to say BJ, from international child sex traffickers in bathrooms at random events to help you get the point. Ghislaine, I found out her name's not pronounced Ghislaine, it's Ghislaine. Excuse me, joked that maybe I should keep it open. I might find a suitable husband before I get any older. Always the instigator of a good joke, but unable to take one herself, she didn't like when I poked back that it was more in her recent taste of men, since she loved to brag about her rendezvous with her various lovers. Once she came back giddy as a schoolgirl with an explosion of news, with all the build-up and excitement in her voice, you'd think she was the next crown princess, but she had given George Clooney a BLOW job in the bathroom at some random event, and she never let that one down. Ghislaine, in case you've been off in Siberia or something the last 3 months, is the alleged partner in crime of the recently suicided international child sex trafficker to the stars, Jeffrey Epstein, and the above screenshot is from the sworn deposition of a victim and star witness, Virginia Giuffre Roberts, unsealed last month. Here, you can download and read the deposition for yourself. My question is this, and I think I'm going to do that and actually read it all. My question is this. Do you think George Clooney would have gotten a BJ from Ghislaine Maxwell in the bathroom at an event and not known she was an international child sex trafficker? Yeah, me neither. For the last year, I've been dropping some super subtle hints about how there's a lot more than meets the eye when it comes to George Clooney. Actress who accused George Clooney of sexual harassment cover-up was just shot and killed. That's interesting. For example, how in August 2018, police shot and killed actress Vanessa Marquez, who very coincidentally had been vocally accusing George Clooney of overseeing an elaborate cover-up of the culture of systemic sex abuse on the set of ER. But I'm getting way ahead of myself here. Let's start at the beginning to see just who George Clooney really is. Clooney was born on May 6, 1961 in Lexington, Kentucky. His mother, Nina Bruce Warren, was a beauty queen and city councilwoman. His father, Nick Clooney, is a former corporal in the U.S. Army and later a journalist, anchorman, game show host, and television host who in 2004 ran unsuccessfully for Congress. Nick Clooney is a member of something called the 917 Society. On the website of this political club, Nick Clooney is quoted as saying he always carries his own pocket constitution, which was given to him by the controversial Senator Robert Byrd. And of course, yes, that's the same Robert Byrd that was in the KKK and who Hillary spoke so clearly of. Senator Byrd, by his own admission, was a member of the KKK in the 1940s. Byrd, who was a friend and mentor to George Clooney's father, was at the time of his death in 2010 the longest-serving senator. Barack Obama gave the eulogy at the funeral of this once literal Klansman. Isn't that strange? Oh, the irony of that. The Clooney family connections to Washington and politics at the highest level is nothing new. Fun fact, his maternal great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, Mary Ann Sparrow, was half-sister of Nancy Lincoln, mother of, you guessed it, Abraham Lincoln. Not only is Clooney related to Washington royalty, he's not the first person in his family to make it big in entertainment. Cabaret singer and actress Rosemary Clooney was George Clooney's aunt, the sister of his father, Nick Clooney. George's other aunt, Betty Clooney, was also a famous singer in the 1950s, and yet another famous singer, You Light Up My Life singer, Debbie Boone, is George's cousin. Recall that his father was a game show and TV host, and it almost starts to seem if being from certain families makes it a lot easier to break into Hollywood. And of course, we know that it does. Clooney was raised a strict Roman Catholic and attended Catholic schools where he served as an altar boy from the time he was young. By middle school, Clooney had developed Bell's palsy, a type of facial paralysis. Bell's palsy is rare in adolescence, as it's mostly linked to sexually transmitted herpes and extreme stress. It's worth noting that Clooney's fellow United Nations and Council on Foreign Relations pal, Angelina Jolie, has also long struggled with Bell's palsy. In Clooney's case, what with the rampant systemic child abuse we are learning has gone on for decades in the Catholic Church, and the connection between Hollywood, child sex abuse, and Hollywood-linked military programs such as MK Ultra. Recall Clooney's father, military ties. His having Bell's palsy as a child is certainly an interesting side note. There are red flags from the start when it comes to Clooney's acting career. His very first acting role came in 1978 on a television miniseries, Centennial, based on a novel by one of the most well-documented CIA-linked novelists, James A. Michener. The New York Times article, How the CIA Played Dirty Tricks with Culture, talks about Michener being on the CIA payroll. It's funny to me how Clooney, coming from a background such as his, would land his very first acting gig ever on a CIA-sponsored production. For those who are new to my work, my journey of exposing all the dark truths about Hollywood started when I began to find out about Hollywood's link to our government and began lecturing about it, much to the dismay of my big Beverly Hills agents who'd have much rather I spend my time working the system I'd figured out existed, like, say, I don't know, George Clooney. Clearly, Clooney and I are not made of the same stuff. Next, Clooney studied acting with leading Scientologist Milton Katselas. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that last name right, so if I've butchered it, please forgive me. At his Beverly Hills Playhouse for 5 years, from 1982 to 1987. In the book co-authored by the now deceased under extremely mysterious circumstances, Andrew Breitbart, Hollywood Interrupted, Insanity, Chic in Babylon, The Case Against Celebrity, Milton Katselas, is discussed at length, as well as Scientology in general, and it's connected to Hollywood. I'd like to get that book and read it. Here's the Cliff Notes. Think of Scientology's presence in Hollywood as an intelligence dragnet to identify those who will trade compromising secrets for power and influence. One of the very top lieutenants of that intelligence operation for decades was Milton Katselas. In July 15th, 2007, New York Times, the actualizer, students have left Katsala's school, the Beverly Hills Playhouse, because of the pressure they felt to join the Church of Scientology. They could not ignore how many of their classmates and teachers were Scientologists and the assorted weirdness. According to Breitbart's 2004 book, Hollywood Interrupted, Scientology principles dominated at the Playhouse. For example, students who were sick had to report to one of the class's ethics officers, an ideal borrowed from Scientology and arguably intelligence operations and Nazism. According to one former student, the ethics officers stand around like monitors against the wall with notepads and take notes: who's late, who's talking, who's dating, who's chewing gum. Another former student talks about how Katsalis, his students, and his Scientology-based philosophy consumed her life, realizing by the time she left that it was a cult atmosphere. It wasn't about acting as much as a way of life. You had to do precisely what they said or you wouldn't get ahead in your career. If you weren't a complete disciple of their philosophy, you would fail. It's worth noting that Katsalis trained Rob Reiner. There's a name we're familiar with. And why are we familiar with it? Oh, very, very, very vocal against Trump. Gene Hackman, Jenna Elfman, Alec Baldwin. Another one that's not a surprise: Michelle Pfeiffer, Tony Danza, Ted Danson, Tom Selleck, Jeffrey Tambor, among many others. One can only assume that Clooney spent those 5 years at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, providing he was willing to be the perfect puppet. After his time under Katsalis, over the next decade, Clooney appeared on shows like The Facts of Life, Golden Girls, and Roseanne. Weird side note, Clooney took a picture of his man parts and left it on set. Can't help but wondering what with the Scientology influence, if Clooney was already working to build up his portfolio of compromising information. But early randomly placed dick pics aside, how does one go from a guest star in The Facts of Life to owning a $20 million Los Angeles estate, a $16 million Oxfordshire mansion, a $50 million Italian villa, and a $50 million Cabo San Lucas mansion recently sold to Mexican billionaire? What's that transition really all about? How much does it have to do with Clooney's royal DC Hollywood family lineage? Katsalis, a Big Brother-esque Scientology intel tutelage, as I will show you, Clooney's own keen and calculated moves into the open arms of the deep state establishment. The answer is everything. Clooney's star number was called when he landed the role of Dr. Doug Ross on ER. During the time, Hollywood began the certification process, giving him 2 Emmy nominations and 3 Golden Globe nominations, but not awarding him anything yet. It's worth looking at who Clooney was starring alongside, like Anthony Edwards, who recently came out about the sex abuse he suffered as an underage boy by powerful men in Hollywood. Are you starting to wonder if these people are given the opportunities and the roles for a reason? Because they are brought up within this system and are intentionally elevated because their resulting influence will be controlled? During this time, Clooney also began his film career. I know this is rather long, but I think it's really important, extremely important. So that is why I am continuing to read this. And, if this is not of interest to you, you can fast forward to the other material. His first real film role was in that Harvey Weinstein, Quentin Tarantino team from Dusk Till Dawn. So yes, from the very beginning, Clooney has been surrounded by Hollywood folks who push deep state CIA agendas. That list has grown substantially over the years to include Brad Pitt, Don Cheadle, Matt Damon, among many others, who all bear the same deep state actor-activist campaign contributor signature. After one fine day with fellow Katsalis alumni Michelle Pfeiffer, Clooney landed the role, wink wink, in the Joel I've Slept With 20,000 People Schumer film Batman and Robin. 75-year-old Hollywood director Joel Schumacher, St. Elmo's Fire, Flatliners, Batman Forever, estimates he's had 20,000 sexual partners. So you can understand that having sex with a different person every day for 54 years. These are our storytellers. Interesting. It's also worth noting that, and I want to just say that I actually have seen George Clooney in person because they were filming. I used to live in Statesville, North Carolina, for a little while, and they were filming the movie Leathernecks there, and I watched him and, oh gosh, what's her name? I just can't think of her name. It's just on the tip of my tongue and I can't remember it, but I watched them and they were doing the same scene over and over and over and over again. And they had this little rain machine coming down on them and stuff. And it was interesting. I just sat there and watched them film it because I could. So anyway, boy, I sure didn't suspect anything like this at that time. It's also worth noting that Clooney's Batman director, every day a new sex partner, Joel Schumacher, went on to direct films with the assistance of the DoD, A Time to Kill, and the CIA, Bad Company. Similarly, the first of Schumacher's Batman films stars Tommy Lee Jones, the cousin of Chase Brandon, who would soon after become the CIA's first formal entertainment liaison officer. Cozy, isn't it? And nothing like what you've been told. The next year, Clooney played Captain Bosch in The Thin Red Line, another Hollywood government film. Then came The Perfect Storm, which was, you guessed it, a joint government Hollywood production. Wow, going all the way back to Clooney's very first role in Centennial, all the way up until The Perfect Storm, you can see a very clear pattern is emerging. Clooney auditions for the CIA. Next, Clooney began making movies to become a real player in this system, which he either understood from the beginning or was certainly starting to figure out. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, another Miramax movie, is an adaptation of the cult memoir of Chuck Barris, a game show host who was actually CIA. Recall the fact that Clooney's dad, Nick, was a TV game show host who got his start in the U.S. Army, went on to journalism, and now works alongside Clooney, meddling on the African continent. Getting a little ahead of myself here, but you get the point. Much like the CIA-sponsored overt propaganda piece, The Recruit, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind shows the farm, the CIA's semi-secret agent training facility, and just like in The Recruit, the protagonist is being inducted and initiated into that covert world. Who is being inducted and initiated into that covert world. Was this a subtle nod to the power structure Clooney was climbing? A gesture as if to say, I get it. I know how all this works. I'm one of you. You decide. Then came Good Night and Good Luck. The story centers on journalist Edward R. Murrow's quest to bring down Joseph McCarthy. As most of you know, the CIA's signature is white hot on this entire subject matter. The movie is the equivalent of porn to the establishment powers and serves to advance and reaffirm their agenda about this time in history. Good Night and Good Luck is a film born out of the creative relationship between George Clooney and Grant Heslov, a producer Clooney would go on to win an Oscar with for the CIA-sponsored Argo just a few short years later. Curious that Clooney and Heslov chose to give a lot of public attention and approval to not just Murrow, but the whole See It Now CBS crew. Many believe that in real life, Murrow wasn't exactly the heroic counter-establishment figure he's made out to be in the film. It's also curious, but not, how positively CBS is portrayed, considering CBS's deep ties to the CIA. It's worth noting that almost everyone involved in Good Night and Good Luck had either already made a film with CIA assistance or went on to do so. This moment in Clooney's career signified an inflection point where, to the keen observer, he crossed a proverbial Rubicon and received his stamp of approval. George Clooney was a culture influence weapon willing to be used. It is all the more telling than when in 2006, Clooney next starred in Syriana. CIA veteran Robert Baer and his books on his time with the agency and covert operations were the basis for Syriana. Baer's been quoted as saying, all these people that run studios, they go to Washington, they hang out with senators, they hang out with CIA directors, and everybody's on board. Tricia Jenkins, noted expert on CIA Hollywood connections, said there are some uglier portrayals, like in the movie Syriana, which features George Clooney as Bob Barnes, a CIA officer tasked with assassinating a Middle Eastern leader. Unless you read the fine credits at the end of the film, you'd have no idea you just watched a movie produced with CIA help. According to the New York Times, Syriana is one of the season's offerings that have overt social purposes and activist campaigns attached to their movies. Syriana earned Clooney his very first Academy Award just 10 short years, nearly to the day after Harvey Weinstein gave him his first big break in the film. 2006 was also the year Clooney and Barack Obama became friends. If Senator Obama became presidential candidate, it would be the most electrifying thing to happen to the Democratic Party since Kennedy, Clooney wrote to the Los Angeles Times in October 2006, 2 years before the one-term senator ran for president. Are you beginning to see how it all works? Fairly simple, isn't it? Almost frustrating. We haven't seen it sooner. But then again, we haven't been working with as much information as we now possess. The picture is becoming incredibly clear. What just happened there? That was weird. Clooney gushing ode to the CIA deep state machine, The Men Who Stare at Goats. I saw that movie. The Men Who Stare at Goats was such a natural next and frankly brilliant move considering where Clooney was at this point. I want to be clear that CIA has not acknowledged as of yet they were involved with this film, but yeah, I think they were. If you've ever seen that film, I can just about guarantee they were. One, the original documentary was made in conjunction with the CIA. Two, this is the exact kind of movie the CIA would assist. Three, the CIA technical consultants listed as having worked on the film were employed by the Pentagon at the time they were working on the film, which means they would have had to have the government approval to do so. The producers, Clooney among them, must have had Pentagon permission for this to occur. In other words, this was a CIA-sponsored film. Parts of the movie were filmed at the New Mexico Military Institute, a government-funded military college. Like all Pentagon installation, you cannot film there without their permission. For this type of permission, you must submit your script to the Office of Film Liaisons. If approved, the producers must enter into a production agreement with the DoD, whereby the government is given line-by-line control of not just the military scenes, but the whole of the script in its entirety. There is a military technical advice firm listed in the credits. This military technical advice firm specializes in films with DoD CIA involvement. Made by Overture Films, a production and distribution company who's since been shut down and turned into Relativity Media, a company that turns out DoD, Department of Defense, CIA films like no other. The screenwriter is highly involved in the CIA Hollywood world. Loosely based on John Ronson's book of the same name, The Men Who Stare at Goats is about the esoteric and occult in relation to spycraft. It tells the story of a journalist who is inducted into the world of psychic soldiers during the Iraq War. The movie goes on to explain some of the history behind the First Earth Battalion, an experimental Pentagon unit. The film leaves out only by name MK Ultra and similar CIA projects and experiments with these very aims. In the film, Kevin Spacey, there's a name we recognize. He was a visitor to the island. Kevin Spacey plays the CIA head of essentially the MK Ultra division, specializing in trafficking and secrets and so-called human potential, and is described as a failed fiction writer in a not-so-subtle nod to L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. It was shortly after this film, in 2010, that the now Oscar winner Clooney was invited to join the Council on Foreign Relations. Now, how often is a Hollywood actor invited to join the Council on Foreign Relations? Do you not think that's odd? Because I do. Yeah, look, Carrie Kavanaugh is a diplomat and professor who's also on the Council of Foreign Relations. Juju Chang, journalist, reporter for ABC News. Dick Cheney, 46th Vice President. Henry Casernos, 10th United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and then there's George Clooney. Yeah, well, there you go. The Council on Foreign Relations, for anyone who doesn't know, is an elite power structure filled with unelected journalists and Hollywood and Silicon Valley shills who, well, I guess they do have Hollywood in there. Who knew? And Silicon Valley shills who, in lockstep with the State Department, make foreign policy decisions completely outside the purview and checks and balances of the democratic process. At the same time, he became involved with John Prendergast, a noted Soros-funded deep state agent who fomented genocide in Rwanda. Interesting. He hangs out with some real winners. It was at this point that Hollywood actor George Clooney became an expert on the subject of and deeply involved in the politics and wars on the African continent. Well, next came the underage sex parties, of course. It was also in 2010 when George attended parties with Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, I can't pronounce that, described as elite orgies where male guests dressed as nuns and performed stripteases, and where the Italian Prime Minister is accused of raping a minor. George was called as a witness in his rape trial in Milan for paying an underage prostitute for sex. Well, the Italian Prime Minister is accused of paying cash and jewels to have underage girls, very likely trafficked for sex, from all we're now learning from unsealed epic fine documents at his so-called bunga bunga parties. Parties that newly minded CFR member George Clooney also attended. The deeper you dig, the more you understand that 2010 was Clooney's year zero. Remember when Clooney, alongside Mockingbird Anderson Vanderbilt Cooper, in the wake of the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, organized a telethon called Hope for Haiti Now, raising over $60 million that was funneled to the Clinton, Bush, Haiti Fund, the UN, Oxfam, and the Red Cross, and not a dime reached Haiti? Because the cabal remembers. This, my fair-hearted friends, is their love language, stealing from the poor and giving to the rich. As you can see, the road to Oz does exist. It's not paved with yellow bricks, but skulls engraved with instructions like shill for the CIA. Attend elite child sex parties and use humanitarian disasters to enrich powerful political elites. George Clooney had just become an agent of influence. Being born into the right family, and with his start at a Scientology intel nest followed by his long list of CIA-approved and sponsored projects, culminating in his overture, The Men Who Stare at Goats, and his jaunts to elite orgies and Haiti relief mass financial scam, all in the bag, Clooney was actively and openly sucking up to the global institutions and hidden hand of the cabal running the world, and it worked. It's clear to me that by 2010, Clooney's initiation into the world of intelligence agencies and higher politics was complete. Here's Clooney and John Kerry, long-faced John Kerry. And here's Clooney and John Bolton. There's one thing that's most important to understand. It's this. Politics is downstream from culture. In order to influence politics, people who know what they're doing start with culture. Influence on popular culture is what they want. By influencing culture, you influence the world. Those willing to facilitate this dynamic, like George, I'll shill for you Clooney, unbeknownst to an unsuspecting population, make films and geopolitical moves in order to stand up and identify themselves as agents of influence. By this moment in his career, Clooney was obviously very well aware of how this system worked and was making a series of bold moves to elevate himself within the global power structure. Is it at all reasonable to believe that someone who has demonstrated an absolute willingness to covertly align interests with the CIA and elite power nexus that gave us MK Ultra, Project Mockingbird, Nazism, and all our wars and genocides suddenly became an actual activist and humanitarian? No, silly goose. 1,000,000,000 times no. The truth is that early CIA involvement in Darfur went largely unreported, and with George Clooney entering the PR fray over the African continent, he was being given more responsibility. Could he shape geopolitical narrative on this scale on behalf of the global power establishment? Maybe he could, especially with a little help from dear old dad. Yeah, there's George and his father Nick in Darfur. In exchange for using his cult of celebrity to control what people believe is happening there, George Clooney is in fact being paid by the world's top 2 war profiteers, Lockheed Martin and Boeing, to oppose war profiteering by African disloyal to the U.S. government's agenda. David Swanson of worldbeyondwar.org says it turns out Clooney opposes not war profiteering in general, but war profiteering while African. Swanson goes on to explain how Clooney's new organization, the Sentry, is part of the Enough Project, which is part of the Center for American Progress, which is a leading backer of humanitarian wars and various other wars for that matter, and which is funded by the world's top war profiteer, Lockheed Martin, and by number 2, Boeing, among other war profiteers. According to Clooney's group, the killing in the Congo happens despite years of international attention, not because of it. Clooney's organization also promotes this argument for more U.S. war-making in the DRC from Kathy Bigelow, best known for producing the CIA propaganda film Zero Dark 30. Add all this, the fact that Swanson points out Clooney's wife, incidentally, works for the U.S.-friendly dictators and brutal killers in places like Bahrain and Libya, and, well, things start to make a lot more sense. Since becoming a bona fide deep state asset, Clooney has been involved in Darfur through the NGO he founded with John Pendergast, Matt Damon, Brad Pitt, and Don Cheadle, which was first called Not on Our Watch, but later changed its name to The Sentry. Clooney's co-founder of The Sentry, John Prendergast, founder of the Soros-funded Enough Project and former African director for the National Security Council, finds himself awkwardly in a debate with an informed person here. I do recommend watching the full debate, but if you don't have time, I've clipped the best parts for you in which you'll clearly understand. We don't have time to do all that because, as it is, this is taking a long time to get through. Like the good cabal puppet, what does Clooney do? Why, he keeps founding NGO after NGO. Most recently, he and John Prendergast went on to found the Satellite Sentinel Project, a satellite warning system to detect mass atrocities in South Sudan. Combine all this with his push for regime change, and it's as if he's operating as one with the CIA. Clooney's shilling for the global elites began to pay off in dividends in 2013 when Argo, the CIA-sponsored Ben Affleck movie he co-produced, beat CIA-sponsored Zero Dark 30 for Best Picture. That was the year, in my humble opinion, the cabal peaked. Let's end where we began, those 276 Stratfor emails mentioning Clooney and wondering why an intelligence publisher working on behalf of the military-industrial complex and the U.S. government was keeping such close tabs on a Hollywood actor. Remember, Stratfor works on behalf of factions of the U.S. government as well as major military-industrial complex companies such as Boeing and Lockheed. Understand why there are 276 Stratfor files on Clooney is because they are tracking a government and an MI6 asset. Remember that Sudan satellite project of George Clooney's? Yeah, well, looks like the UN and Google are involved too. There was a press report that Clooney was robbed in Sudan by child soldiers with assault rifles. This internal strut for email sharing. The press report remarks, "I'm shocked at the news. One has to wonder if this quip is sarcastic, as it almost appears, which isn't dicey or suspicious at all." Here is the State Department discussing a meeting with Clooney and George Soros backed John Prendergast. Another State Department email discussing yet another meeting with the Hollywood actor. Add to all this the fact that we just learned from the Grassley report that all State Department emails were being copied in real time to an email address to a Chinese corporation, and things start to get really interesting. Folks, I could go on and suggest that you take a little time to go through some of my many Clooney emails on WikiLeaks yourself, but I think it's fair to say that without even mentioning tons of other red flags like Clooney's Sony State Department stamp of approval, here you can see the Undersecretary of the State Department talking with Sony CEO Michael Linton about how George Clooney is one Hollywood star that can be counted on to push State Department agendas. Or how his first wife, Talia Balsam, was born of Hollywood Van Patten royalty with both deep state and deep Scientology ties. You can clearly see that George Clooney has made a career out of being willing to be handled. In the old world, the one crumbling before their very eyes, the puppets reigned supreme. Now, however, as the curtain is being pulled back, the world is seeing through these shills and stooges how it all worked, and the human atrocities, both physical and psychological, that have been created by being blinded by these celebrity agents of influence. And we're tearing it down brick by brick, starting with shiny objects like Clooney. To those here reading this, you're one of the millions of wide-awake people on this planet actively annihilating the old world order in real time with nothing but our minds, and I applaud you. I know there's a lot to digest here. I'll be making a podcast episode early this week to bring you through all of this information, including my thoughts and everything I could fit in the article, everything I couldn't fit in the article. To get my podcast, become a patron. I'm 100% independent and reader funded. If you appreciate my work, research, the topics I cover, and efforts to build a counter Hollywood, and want to help me take on the current system with a vengeance, the best way to do that is to become a Patreon. My new podcast series called Becoming Real is an exclusive reward to show my appreciation for my wonderful patrons. And this is, again, Tiffany Fitzhenry, and it's tiffanyfitzhenry.com. She has her website here, and you can find these things, these articles and so forth, such as this, which is gobsmacking to say the very, very least. And also, if you become a Patreon, which I may do, I don't support a lot of people because I can't afford to, but, I do. Well, actually, I think the only one I'm supporting right now is Judicial Watch, but I might do, because she's obviously doing really, really tremendous work here. So anyway, that is, I'm not surprised. I mean, seeing George Clooney in that boat with Barack Obama, right then I knew, okay, there's big time connections there. So anyway, let's go back. I know it's taken a long time to get through that, but I really do feel it was necessary, and I think that it's very important because of the ties to everything else that Q has talked about. I think that this is a very important piece of the puzzle, and it lets us see a little bit behind the curtain of what's going on in Hollywood and how they are aligned with the deep state. So let me just cover a couple more things, and then I'm going to call it quits for tonight because well, I think that you know why. And let me see here. There was one other thing that I wanted to get to, but I can't find where it is. I think this might be it. No, it's not. It's interesting, but it's not what I was looking for. Let's see if I can find what I'm looking for. Maybe not. I might have to find it and bring it to you the next time, but since we're on it, let's look at this. Now, this is Amy Klobuchar, and this speaks for itself. I don't even need to introduce this much. It's only 1 minute and 39 seconds long, and you just listen to it and you tell me what you think. Okay.
A tweet. He made fun of me for talking about climate change in the middle of a blizzard, and he called me Snow Woman. So I wrote back, hey, Donald Trump, the science is on my side, and I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard. So I wrote back, hey, Donald Trump, the science is on my side, and I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard. So I wrote back, Donald Trump, the science is on my side, and I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard. Sometimes, if you haven't noticed, you use a little humor. Like when he called me Snow Woman at my announcement in the middle of that thing, I wrote back on Twitter, I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard. So I wrote back, hey, Donald Trump. So I wrote back, hey, Donald Trump. So I wrote back, I tweeted back, the science is on my side. And I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard. And I'd like to see how your hair fares in a blizzard. And I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard. Mr. Umbrella Man. Senator. And he called me Snow Woman. So I wrote back, I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard.
Yeah. Interesting. My hair fares pretty good in a blizzard. I mean, it just gets frizzier. But yeah, I've been in a blizzard more than once. Okay, well, let me see if there's anything short we can get to because... well, time is not on our side. Let's look at this. Charlie Kirk, has anyone noticed what has been missing from all of the Democrat debates? So all the Democrat debates so far? I have. There has not been a single American flag on stage for all 3 debates. Not in Detroit, not in Miami, and not last night in Houston. What country are they trying to represent? Well, they're trying to represent global, interests. Certainly not American interests. But I think we would like an American president, one that's not ashamed of our flag. That's my 2 cents anyway. And I wish I could find this because I really want to bring this to you. Maybe this is it. I don't know. Yes, it is. Okay, yes. In case you're wondering, that is the Prime Minister of Canada. Yes, indeed, it is. And let's just listen to what he has to say here. He looks awfully cozy with him, her, I don't know.
Never fear, the Queen of the North is here. That's me. Never fear, the Queen of the North is here. That's me.
Well, aren't they cozy? Yeah, I have no idea what this is about at all. But it is, who tweeted this? Kirk, whoever Kirk is. And that is definitely Trudeau. Yeah. Don't hate me because of my prime minister. It's not my choice at all. My choice would be to come back to America. And I will at some point just have to stay here. My mother is elderly and I just don't think that it would be in her best interest for me to leave. So anyway, let's take a look and see if there's any other small little item we can get to, because, you know, la la la. Oh, there's so much. There's so much. So much. No, I think I'm going to end it there because it's getting late and there's a lot of other stuff here, but it's kind of involved and I can do that tomorrow. So there. Actually, there is one. This is the last thing, I promise. No, really it is. I'd like to get to this because I think it's important. Judicial Watch files House ethics complaint against Representative Ilhan Omar over potential immigration, marriage, tax, and student loan fraud. Now, this is good news to me. I'm telling you, Judicial Watch does fantastic work. Fantastic. I mean, there are so many things that we wouldn't know and so many things that people that would not have been brought to justice without Judicial Watch. So can't say enough good things about them. Judicial Watch announced today it had hand-delivered ethics complaint to Chairman of the U.S. House of Representatives Office of Congressional Ethics, David Skaggs, calling for a full investigation into potential crimes tied to allegations that Representative Ilhan Omar may have married her biological brother. The evidence is overwhelming. Representative Omar may have violated the law and House rules. The House of Representatives must urgently investigate and resolve the serious allegations of wrongdoings by Representative Omar, stated Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. We encourage Americans to share their views on Representative Omar's apparent misconduct with their congressman. The Judicial Watch complaint is reprinted below. Dear Chairman Skaggs, Judicial Watch is a nonprofit, nonpartisan educational foundation promoting transparency, accountability, and integrity in government and fidelity to the rule of law. We regularly monitor congressional ethics issues as part of our anti-corruption mission. This letter serves as an official complaint with the Office of Congressional Ethics. Substantial, compelling, and, to date, unrefuted evidence has been uncovered that Representative Ilhan Omar may have committed the following crimes in violation of both federal law and Minnesota state law: perjury, immigration fraud, marriage fraud, state and federal tax fraud, and federal student loan fraud. Such violations would also breach the Code of Ethics for Government Service, to which all federal office holders are subject. Any person in government service should uphold the Constitution, laws, and legal regulations of the United States and all governments therein, and neither be a party to their evasion. Representative Omar actions in this suspected immigration fraud, marriage fraud, perjurious statements on her Minnesota divorce filings, and falsification on her tax returns merit your immediate investigation. In the words of investigative reporter David Steinberg, the facts describe perhaps the most extensive spree of illegal conduct committed by a House member in American history. The evidence developed against Representative Omar was the result of a 3-year-long investigation in both the United States and the United Kingdom by Mr. Steinberg and his investigative reporter colleagues, Preya Samsunder and Scott Johnson. It is supported by information gathered from public records, social media postings, genealogy databases, computer forensic analysis, unaltered digital photographs, discussions between investigative reporters and the subjects of the investigations themselves, and information supplied by confidential sources within the Somali American community. Documented-based reporting by Steinberg et al. Has developed the following information. Representative Ilhan Abdullahi Omar, a citizen of the United States, married her biological brother, Ahmed Nur Said Almi, a citizen of the United Kingdom, in 2009, presumably as part of an immigration fraud scheme. The couple legally divorced in 2017. In the course of that divorce, Ms. Omar submitted an application for an order for services by alternate means to the state of Minnesota on August 2nd, 2017, and claimed, among other things, that she had no contact with Ahmed Nur Said Almi after June 2011. She also claimed that she did not know where to find him. The evidence developed by Mr. Steinberg and his colleagues demonstrates with a high degree of certainty that Ms. Omar not only had contact with Mr. Almi, but actually met up with him in London in 2015, which is supported by photographic evidence Ms. Omar signed the application for an order for service by alternate means under penalty of perjury. The very document that Ilhan Omar signed on August 2nd, 2017 bears the following notation directly above her signature. I declare under penalty of perjury that everything I have stated in this document is true and correct. Of particular importance are archived photographs taken during a widely reported trip by Ilhan Omar to London in 2015, posted to her own Instagram account under her nickname Hammy, in which she poses with her husband, presumed brother, Ahmed Almi. These photographs from 2015 are documentary evidence that, in fact, she met up with Mr. Almi after June 2011 and before the date she signed the divorce document in August 2017, thereby calling into question the veracity of her claim that she had not seen Mr. Almi since June 2011. Representative Omar's conduct may include immigration fraud. It appears that Representative Omar married her brother in order to assist his emigration to the United States from the United Kingdom. The same immigration fraud scheme may have aided Mr. Almi in obtaining federally backed student loans for his attendance at North Dakota State University. Mr. Almery and Representative Omar simultaneously attended North Dakota State University and may have derived illicit benefits predicated on immigration fraud scheme. So I'm not going to go on here, but this is all going to be, and he's saying here, we call upon the Office of Congressional Ethics to launch an investigation into Representative Omar's conduct immediately. Sincerely, Tom Fitton, President of Judicial Watch. And I have no doubt that it will be looked into. Now, this is a little late. It's from July 23rd, but I think it's important. I've had it to bring to you guys for a long time, but it's important. So I think that's going to be it for tonight. Anyway, I will be back tomorrow, and and I'll work a little bit more on some other stories that I have that I think will be of interest to you. And so that's it. And I thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you guys more than I could possibly tell you. And I see my fine furry feline friend has gone. So he's probably hinting to me that it's time for bed because he's gone off to sleep. So anyway, you guys have a great evening. Stay safe, stay well, stay blessed, and keep seeking truth. And come back and see me. Otherwise, it gets lonely here. It does. Good night, guys.